You ever get that, like, instant vibe from someone's face? Like, you just meet him and you're like, yep, I trust this person. Or, like, totally the opposite.
Oh, totally.
It's wild how much we pick up on just from, like, looking at someone.
Hmm.
So that's kind of what we're diving into today, face perception. We've got some seriously interesting articles, excerpts from Psychology Today, Columbia Magazine,
Hmm.
even a piece about face reveals, like on YouTube and stuff, in the Creator Handbook.
Interesting.
It all points to how we, like, size people up based on looks, basically.
Yeah, which we all do, right? Whether we admit it or not.
Exactly. And the crazy part is we're going to uncover what those judgments say about us, not just the other person.
It's like holding up a mirror to our own biases and assumptions.
Totally. Okay, so this whole thing reminds me of, remember that American Idol contestant, Brooke White?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
People were convinced she was Mormon just from, like, how she looked. They called it the Mormon glow.
Right. Like she had this, what, wholesome aura.
Exactly. I remember thinking, is that even a thing?
Well, it turns out there's actual science behind it. Researchers actually tested this whole Mormon glow idea, showed people photos of Mormons and non-Mormons, had them guess who was who.
Like, were people just guessing randomly?
Nope, they were right, like 60% of the time.
Yeah.
Way better than chance.
No, 60%. That's crazy. So were they picking up on some, like, spiritual vibe or something?
Not quite. It was actually all about skin health. Turns out Mormons tend to have healthier lifestyles on average, less smoking, drinking, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
And that shows up in their complexion.
makes sense.
Think about it. We're hardwired to judge health, right? From like way back in the day. To find good mates, avoid getting sick, all that.
Right, survival instincts.
Exactly. But that instinct, it kind of spills over into how we judge people socially, too. We connect healthy looks with good qualities. Like,
Right.
in this case, they were linking it with religious purity.
So we're basically equating good health with being a good person. Wow, that's kind of deep.
It is. And it gets even more complex. This whole judging by looks thing goes way beyond just health.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like the whole halo effect. Attractive people just, like, get all the breaks.
Right. They're seen as smarter, kinder, more trustworthy. It's a powerful bias.
But is it all just bias, or is there something to it? Like, actually...
That's the fascinating part. Some studies suggest there might be a real link between attractiveness and certain personality traits, like being outgoing or agreeable.
Wait, so, like, being good-looking actually makes you a nicer person? How does that even work?
It's a chicken or the egg situation. Do good looks lead to a good personality, or the other way around? It's probably a bit of both, honestly.
I can see that.
And one piece of the puzzle is hormones. Testosterone, estrogen, they shape both our facial features and how we behave.
So, like, high testosterone, you get that strong jawline, but also maybe you're more assertive, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And high estrogen, women might have softer features and be more, say, nurturing or agreeable. There was even this study where women with high estrogen faces were accurately perceived as more promiscuous and more beautiful.
Whoa, hold up. More promiscuous.
Yeah, it's wild, right?
That is wild.
Makes you wonder what signals we're sending without even realizing it.
This is making me rethink my whole online dating strategy, so that, like, gut feeling you get when you're swiping through profiles. Maybe it's not just superficial.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
Our brains are constantly picking up these subtle cues from faces, even if we're not consciously aware of it.
Okay, that is both cool and terrifying.
Right. Which leads us to another fascinating area. Gaydar.
Ooh, gaydar. I've always wondered about that one. Like, how much is real intuition versus just relying on stereotypes?
Well, there's a surprising amount of research on this, actually. Studies show people can identify sexual orientation with better than chance accuracy, even just from looking at mouths and eyes.
No way. Just mouths and eyes. What's the deal with that?
It's pretty mind-blowing, right? And get this. Gay men and lesbians often have the sharpest gaydar. And believe it or not, women who are ovulating.
Wait, really? Ovulating women?
Yep. It seems like they're tapping into something more intuitive, beyond just obvious visual cues.
Interesting. So there's something to that gay intuition thing, but is it all just, like, stereotypical features? Like a more masculine face or a more feminine face?
It's deeper than that, I think. One theory is that gaydar sometimes works because facial expressions actually leave subtle marks on our faces over time, kind of like the Dorian Gray effect, but for personality instead of morality.
Dorian Gray. Like, our faces literally change based on how we, like, express ourselves.
Exactly. Think about it. Someone who smiles a lot, they develop laugh lines, frowning a lot, you get frown lines. Over time, all those expressions actually mold our faces in subtle ways, and this applies to all sorts of traits, not just sexual orientation.
That's crazy. So you're saying, like, I can spot a chronically grumpy person just by, what, the lines on their face?
It's definitely possible. And this Dorian Gray effect also helps explain why, couples who've been together for ages start to kind of resemble each other.
Oh,
They've been
yeah.
mirroring each other's expressions for years.
That's so cool. Okay, so we've talked about health, attractiveness, even sexual orientation, all from just looking at someone's face. What other secrets can our faces, like, spill?
Well, let's look at something a bit more unsettling. There's a link between certain facial features and aggression, even criminality. It has to do with something called the width-to-height ratio, or WHR.
WHR, that's like how wide your face is compared to how tall it is.
Exactly. And it's connected to testosterone.
Okay, interesting. So, like, a wider face, more testosterone.
Yeah, and here's where it gets kind of unnerving. Studies show people can accurately peg aggressive men based on WHR alone after seeing their face for a mere 39 milliseconds.
Wait, 39 milliseconds? That's like less than a blink of an eye. Seriously.
Seriously. And there's more. Men with higher WHR are also 3 times more likely to lie for financial gain.
Okay, now I'm officially creeped out. So you're saying, like, I can spot a liar just by looking at their face.
Well, it's not foolproof, of course, but there's definitely a connection. Like, judgments made just from headshots often line up with how people describe themselves and how their peers describe them when it comes to trustworthiness.
Okay, so our gut instincts aren't total BS, but this whole WHR thing, it all boils down to testosterone, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't testosterone have positive sides too? Like with leadership and stuff?
Absolutely. High testosterone is like this double-edged sword. Yeah, it's linked to aggression, maybe deception, but it's also associated with dominance, those leadership qualities.
So a high WHR face could mean someone's either a con artist or a CEO. That's a pretty wide range.
It is, and the research kind of backs it up. Companies with CEOs who have higher WHR often have better financial performance.
Yeah.
People can even accurately guess who's a CEO just from photos.
Wow. So high testosterone equals success? Is that what we're saying?
It's definitely more nuanced than that. It could be that these men are actually more competent, or it could be a self-fulfilling prophecy. They look like leaders, so they get treated as such, and that helps them succeed.
Interesting. So it's not just our biology, it's how society reacts to our appearance, too. What about women, though? Does this whole dominance thing apply to them, too?
Surprisingly, yes. Studies show that even for women, looking dominant is linked to success as a CEO, at least so far. It makes you wonder if that's like innate or learned behavior.
So a powerful jawline equals a career boost, no matter your gender. I'm starting to see a pattern here.
Right. And this whole looking like a leader thing, it even reaches into politics. Studies have found a connection between facial features and success in elections.
Really? You're saying voters are actually swayed by how candidates look?
Seems so.
Mm.
One study in Switzerland had children choose between photos of real candidates, asking them who'd be the best captain of their boat. Over 70% of the time, they picked the candidate who actually won the election.
No way. Kids are picking future leaders based on faces. That's wild.
It is remarkable. It suggests that from a very young age, we're already learning what traits we associate with competence and authority, even before we can fully understand those concepts.
This is all incredibly fascinating, but also kind of unsettling. Makes you think about how much our choices are driven by these, like, unconscious biases.
You've hit on a crucial point. These snap judgments, as interesting and, somewhat accurate as they can be, they definitely have their limitations. We can't let them totally dictate how we interact with others.
Exactly. Which brings us to a big question. What about the people who don't fit those, like, dominant high testosterone stereotypes? What about the baby-faced folks out there?
Well, they kind of face a different set of assumptions. Like,
Wow.
they're often seen as less competent, more naive, that kind of thing. Almost like they constantly got to prove themselves.
Oh, that's kind of sad. Just because they have a younger-looking face seems super unfair.
It is. But research shows that a lot of them actually find ways to, like, defy those expectations. Some go above and beyond in school, get amazing grades. Others, sadly, might go the opposite way, get aggressive, try to assert their masculinity.
Yeah, like overcompensating, basically. Trying to break free from that baby face stereotype. Man, it really shows how these biases, even the seemingly harmless ones, can like really impact people's lives.
For sure. And it's not just about men either. Women face their own challenges when it comes to how their faces are perceived, especially with trustworthiness.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, think about it. Men's perceived trustworthiness, it tends to stay kind of consistent over time, right? But women can actually learn to appear more honest as they get older.
Wait, seriously? Like, even if their personality hasn't actually changed?
Exactly. It's not like some magic trick or anything. It's probably a combination of things. Maybe they change their hairstyle, use makeup strategically, even subtly adjust their expressions to project that image of honesty. It's kind of fascinating how much we can manipulate perception with just these tiny changes.
That's kind of creepy, honestly. Like, makes you wonder if you can ever really know someone just by looking at them.
It definitely raises some questions about how reliable our judgments are. And it's important to remember these snap judgments. They come from, like, way back, right?
Mm,
Evolutionarily, they helped us make quick decisions, maybe in dangerous situations.
right, right.
But when we just blindly apply them to everyone, that's when it becomes prejudice,
Mm.
discrimination.
So we got to be more mindful, not just jump to conclusions about someone based on their face.
Exactly. We got to engage that higher level thinking. See the person as an individual, not just a set of facial features that trigger some stereotype in our brains.
This is giving me a lot to think about. It's like these biases are secretly influencing everything. Hiring, voting, even just how we treat strangers on the street.
It's true, and it raises even bigger questions about how we define these things.
Hmm.
Leadership, competence, trustworthiness.
Mm.
Are we letting these subconscious biases limit how we understand other people? Are we missing out on amazing individuals just because they don't look the part?
Okay, so we've talked about being aware of our biases, but can we actually change them, or are we stuck with these snap judgments forever?
Well, that's where it gets really interesting. Some research suggests that we can actually retrain our brains to, like, weaken those automatic associations.
Wait, hold up. We can unlearn these snap judgments. How's that even possible?
Researchers at Columbia University developed this really cool computer program that helps people disconnect those mental links between, like, facial features and personality traits.
A computer program? Sounds kind of sci-fi. What's it like?
It's based on this idea of, like, counter conditioning. So they show you images of faces that usually trigger those negative stereotypes, but they pair them with descriptions of positive behaviors.
Okay, I'm following.
Like, you might see a picture of someone with a high WHR, right? But the caption says they volunteer at a homeless shelter or something.
I get it. So you're basically training your brain to associate those features with good stuff instead of the bad stuff.
Exactly. And the results are pretty promising. One study showed that this exercise actually reduced bias in mock trials. Like, the jurors were less likely to judge the defendant based on having an untrustworthy face after doing this training.
That's amazing. So just by seeing these counter-stereotypical pairings over and over, we can actually change how we react on a subconscious level.
It seems so. It's a really exciting area of research, and it suggests that we're not, like, prisoners of our biases. We can learn to see people more objectively, even if it takes conscious effort.
This kind of brings us back to that whole don't judge a book by its cover thing, right? It's about going beyond those surface level cues and really seeing the unique person behind the face.
Perfectly said. It's about embracing the complexity of human nature and remembering that people are full of surprises. We often find those amazing qualities when we actually take the time to look past those initial impressions.
I love that. This whole conversation has been so insightful. Before we wrap up, I have one last thought to throw out there.
Yeah.
We've talked about how these modern ideas about like dominance and competence, they might be shaping everything from hiring to politics. It makes me wonder, what if someone like Abraham Lincoln were running for office today?
Ooh, that's a fascinating question.
Right? Think about it. Lincoln, with his distinctive appearance, we talked about that high WHR, but also some people might say he wasn't exactly conventionally attractive by today's standards, you know?
Yeah.
His kind of gaunt face, his melancholic vibes. Would he even get a second glance in today's, like, image-obsessed world?
It's a tough one. Our culture is so focused on attractiveness, charisma, all that. Would voters see past those superficial traits and recognize his intelligence, his integrity, his leadership? Or would his looks just completely overshadow everything else?
Right. He wasn't exactly a glamorous, photogenic kind of candidate. But he's considered one of our greatest presidents. Do you think he'd be electable today?
It's hard to say. It really makes you think, Are we putting too much emphasis on style over substance? Are we letting our focus on appearances prevent us from seeing true leadership potential?
It's a sobering thought for sure, and this whole deep dive has been such an eye-opener. I'm definitely going to be way more conscious of those snap judgments I make. Really try to see the person, not just the face.
That's what it's all about, right?
Yeah.
Moving beyond those automatic responses, those things our brains are kind of wired for, and engaging with each other in a more thoughtful, nuanced way.
Totally. And who knows? Maybe by doing that, we'll uncover those hidden gems, the future Lincolns who might be getting overlooked because they don't fit some narrow definition of what success should look like.
It's a challenge worth taking on, for sure, to look beyond the surface and see the true potential within everyone we meet.
I love that. Well, listeners, that about wraps up our deep dive into the fascinating and sometimes kind of creepy world of face perception. We hope you learned something new and maybe even started thinking a little differently about how you see the people around you.
It really is. And what's so cool is, like, we started off talking about those gut feelings we get from faces, right?
Hmm.
But now we're kind of seeing how much our own perceptions, our biases, like shape what we see.
Totally. Like we're looking in a mirror, but it's reflecting back more than just the other person, you know? It's showing us ourselves too.
Exactly. It all comes back to that question, right? Like, would we even recognize true greatness today if it didn't come in a perfectly packaged, Instagram-ready appearance?
Ooh, that's a good one. Imagine Lincoln's first campaign ad was just like a TikTok video, you know?
Right. Would his message even cut through all the noise with everyone judging his, his looks and all that?
Probably not. It's crazy to think how many brilliant people, incredible leaders, maybe we're just missing out on because they don't fit our like narrow idea of what success should look like.
Totally. And that's the challenge, right? To like push past those biases, not just for the sake of being fair, but for the sake of like moving forward as a society.
Couldn't agree more. This whole deep dive has honestly kind of changed how I think about this stuff. I'm definitely going to be way more aware of those snap judgments I make, you know, really try to see the person, not just the face.
That's the key takeaway, for
Yes.
sure.
Well, listeners, that just about wraps up our deep dive into the wild world of face perception. Hope you enjoyed it. And maybe, just maybe, you'll start looking at the people around you in a whole new light. Until next time, keep questioning those assumptions, challenge those biases, and keep diving deeper. You never know what you might discover about yourself and the world.